And so we asked them, we interviewed Lieutenant Greg Bueno from the Florida Highway Patrol, actually, and he told us that it holds about 8,000 people. By the time we were there were about 1,000 inside, so it had plenty of room, which was great news because the line wrapped all these, as you saw, wrapped all the way around the parking lot. So, and he also said that they have security inside. The National Guard will be there. They have food, water, air conditioning. So hopefully it'll be a good place for all of these folks to ride it out.
And last we heard from Joe Griffin, who's there, that there is still room. The problem, of course, is getting there for people because the public shuttles, those shut down hours ago.
Right, and we also looked at the parking lot, which was pretty full as well. So the question is, though, these people have been waiting in line 4, 5, 6 hours, if some of them told us, and you sort of wonder, well, why didn't they leave town, before that? Because if you could drive maybe 4, 5, 6 hours, maybe you could get away from it. But it was a tough situation to see. So I just hope they all get inside and they're all safe.
Yeah, there's so many considerations when you're thinking about evacuating your pets, your medicine, your loved ones, gasoline, just the fear of being on the highway, getting stuck in traffic, things like that. Randy, thanks for that. We'll have more on that tonight in our coverage. We're going to take another short break and be right back.
Yeoman's duty all night long with this win. He had the southern eye wall all night long. Now it is beginning to push some rain into South Florida. Every time a band goes by, you will get increased winds. So Homestead, all the way down to Cutler Bay, you're seeing some wind come in. Anytime later on this afternoon a storm comes in, there's even a potential for a small tornado or two. So keep that in mind, something else to worry about. The watches have gone all the way up now into Georgia. Hurricane warnings for the entire southern half of Florida. But overnight, Michael, what happened was that the model, and we're going to talk about these models here in a half hour, so the model shifted 20 miles farther to the west. So now, not a landfall near Marathon, Florida, likely a landfall in the lower Keys, somewhere Cudjoe Key, Big Pine Key, all the way down maybe even to Key West. And that's a big difference because now that puts Fort Myers in play of a landfalling hurricane and also makes Tampa a much more dangerous place to be with gusts there possibly to 120.
Has the destruction that it has wreaked thus far in any way diminished its capabilities when it does get to the United States?
If the storm does not regain strength over the Florida Strait, it's going 12 miles per hour. It's got 90 miles to go. Do the math. That's 8 hours. If in 8 hours it can't get its stuff back in a group, then yes, that has diminished the potential for what the damage could be. But it doesn't diminish the damage that will be caused by storm surge. Remember, even Katrina didn't come on shore as a 5, but because it was a 5 in the Gulf, it had that bubble of water that it was carrying with it. Well, this has a bubble of water, too. It's going to carry that storm surge into the Everglades, right through the Southern Keys, right into Cape Coral and Fort Myers and the Naples area and Venice. All those people that have homes right on canals and their homes only 4 feet above sea level, you need to get out of there because that water is going to be higher than your house, at least higher than the bottom of it.
So pardon my naivete, but I keep hearing you use the words and others, storm surge. Mm-hmm. Define it, and for how long does it last?
It's a flood. How's that?
Perfect. That I understand.
Because people really, you don't understand the word storm surge. It's a great term. It's what it is. It's how the water comes on shore one wave after another. But it is a flood that will kill you. Water kills more people than wind. So call it whatever you want. Call it something that you shouldn't be in, because when the storm surge comes in, it's impossible to get out of because the roads are already flooded. So once you're in it to lose it. I hate to use that term, but you get it.
Hey, Chad, one more naive question, and pardon me for these, but I'm curious. I see all the color on the map. As a matter of fact, right behind you right now over Cuba. What exactly am I looking at with all of those different colorations? I noticed that there had been purple. Now there's not purple. Explain it to me.
What you see behind me here is a forecast, again, a model. Think about when we were kids. We would buy a little 1967 Camaro, and we put the model together with model glue, and our fingers would be all stuck together. This is a model trying to model a car, but we're trying to model the atmosphere. Significantly more complicated. So what you're seeing here is a model of what we believe the radar will look like. if I keep pushing the button, it goes right over Tampa. Push the button again, you see what the winds are going to be, 50, 60, 100. And then it's the high cloud tops that we've been watching over the next couple days. What's been happening here? The colors you see behind me, this is wind field. The white, 100-mile-per-hour gusts or greater, and Key West, your gust is going to be 130 or 150. So that's 150 or greater in some spots. And then up to Fort Myers, there's your white. And I know it's confusing, and you have to look up here, and we're pushing the button so fast, and you have to see where the key is. But the key to this one is the winds are going to be over 100 in many places over South Florida.
Chad Myers, we will revisit with you in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much for that.
With the latest. Lonnie, good morning.
And good morning to you and good morning, everybody. You know, where Jeff Glor is located down there on Biscayne Bay, we just checked in on the stats. They've already had 1 foot. Now, that's not much, but they've had 1 foot of storm surge, and this storm is miles away. Let me give you the latest information from the National Hurricane Center. This is the latest update that just came in moments ago. You're going to notice the wind speed has come down, and I can tell you why it came down. It was up at 155 miles per hour. It's now down to 130-mile-per-hour maximum wind. That's because it's interacting with the north shore of Cuba. We've had a landfall that wasn't anticipated, a little wobble to the south. That's what these things do. Okay, they wobble back and forth. It is forecast, though, to continue off to the west-northwest of 12 miles per hour. Right now, 225 miles from Miami, so we've got to get to the track. Has the track changed? Well, it still sees that big turn to the north. Very possible to see a landfall around the Florida Keys as a Cat 4. And again, right now at 130 miles per hour, that's barely a Cat 4. 129, you're into a Cat 3, but we believe the Florida Straits, that water is so warm, it's going to strengthen it and then push it up into Florida, possibly staying offshore, but you can't rule that out of having a landfall. The entire state at risk because of the entire width of this storm. Even the East Coast will be affected. All right, Anthony, let's go over to you.
Good morning. This is a monster storm, meaning it has strong winds, and it's still a very large geographical storm. Winds of 155 miles per hour. It actually made landfall in Cuba as a Category 5, and even though it's been interacting with land, it has only slightly weakened to those 155-mile-per-hour winds. We're starting to see the eye reemerge off the coast of Cuba at this point, but look how wide this wind field is. We're starting to even see some of those outer rain bands in Florida. Now, here, unfortunately, is the latest track, and it's something that we weren't hoping to see, that is, shifting just ever so slightly to the west, which means somewhere in the Keys around sunrise tomorrow, we'll feel a landfalling Category 4 hurricane between Key West and Miami. At this point, all the thinking is that it's going to head up toward the Naples area and make landfall there as a Category 4 hurricane, putting the worst storm surge Sunday afternoon near the Everglades. Now, here is another issue and problem with that shift toward the west. That keeps it over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico a little longer, which means when it finally does come on shore, it's closer to us and doesn't have as much time to weaken. And that's why we believe that just about the entire Tampa Bay area will feel hurricane force winds Sunday night into Monday morning, possibly even Category 2 or Category 3 force winds, and that's going to bring down some trees and power lines, but this is a fast mover. By Monday afternoon, it is already moving into Georgia. So this is what those computer models all, again, unfortunately taking that westerly jog, moving it up basically along I-75. And this is the new addition to the hurricane warnings up to Brooksville, up to Hernando County. A warning means you could feel hurricane force winds within 36 hours. There is also now a storm surge warning that extends all the way up to Hernando County, meaning that at least a small storm surge is expected within 36 hours. So here's the timing. Last day to prepare your home or evacuate is today. In fact, I would even say it's this morning. For tomorrow, the morning is going to be gusty. We'll start to feel the outer rain bands, but tomorrow afternoon and evening, that's when the damaging wind and flooding rain is a possibility as we head into Monday. Monday morning is going to be bad, but the rain is actually going to end by midday. Our next threat then is some coastal flooding due to an onshore wind after the storm passes. But let's talk about specifics with Ed Bloodsworth.
Model on the European model, we talk about them all the time, how they're different. The European model
made it hit
has
the town
done...
of Punta Gorda, not the areas that people had anticipated. Let's go to Allison Chinchar with the latest on the storm. Allison, what have you learned from the 5 o'clock update?
Right, so the latest that we've had is we are continuing to see that turn towards the north. That's going to be your biggest update that we've been seeing. And we expected it to do this. We know that at some point it is going to make that turn to basically almost all northward movement. It's still moving at about 9 miles per hour, though, so it is still relatively slow. But we do expect to see maybe perhaps that increase in the wind speed coming up in the next advisory because the pressure has started to drop. Now, usually the pressure drops first and the wind increase follows shortly thereafter. But now it's getting back out over open water, and that's the fuel that these storms need to allow them to intensify. And as it moves farther away from Cuba, it will get into that really warm water. So we do expect it to get back up to a Category 4 strength as it crosses over the Florida Keys and continues up the west coast. Places like Naples, Fort Myers could still be looking at a Category 4 storm as it skirts along those areas. However, by the time we get to Tampa, we do expect some weakening. And then by the time it ends up making it towards the Georgia-Florida state line, we'll be lucky at that point if it still remains a Category 1 storm. 75 miles per hour is that minimum threshold there from a tropical storm to a Category 1 hurricane. But again, that track does continue to take it in through Florida. We talked about the warm water. We're talking upper 80s for the temperatures in that tiny section between Cuba and towards Florida. And that's where it's going to be entering. That's why we expect it to intensify back up to a Category 4 storm before it edges in towards Florida. Now, some of the main concerns with this storm, first and foremost, are going to be the winds, especially if it really is a Category 4 at landfall. We're talking max wind gusts around 135 in Key West, 134 in Fort Myers, even 132 around Tampa. These numbers coming to us from the National Weather Service. The other impact that's going to be there is going to be rainfall. Widespread across Florida, you're talking 6 to 10 inches of rain, but there will be some heavier pockets mixed in that could see in excess of 15 inches of rain. That won't be widespread, but even still, certainly enough to cause some flooding concerns. Even as the storm pushes farther north into other states, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, these states could also be looking at widespread 4 to 6 inches of rain as that storm continues its slow movement. One of the big things people want to know about is the timing for some of the cities. So let's break that down. Naples is likely to have tropical storm force winds arrive as early as 5 a.m. Sunday morning. Hurricane force winds just a few hours after that. Rainfall total, again, we talk 10 to 12 inches potentially in Naples, and that storm surge, that's going to be key. 10 to 15 feet. That's not only the first story of a building, but that's starting to creep into the second story of a home or a business. Tampa, it's going to be a little bit later, but the impacts are still there. We're talking tropical storm force winds arriving in the afternoon, the early afternoon of Sunday. Hurricane force winds arriving by early evening on Sunday. Rainfall about 6 to 8 inches, and that storm surge about 5 to 8 feet. Here's a look at the radar. Don't forget, we also have the potential for severe weather. Tornado warnings have been occurring throughout the day today, and we have a tornado watch in effect for much of southern Florida through the day today, and that may even extend into tomorrow and further north as the system continues to push further off to the north. And it's mainly from those outer bands. So here's the look at severe weather threats for today. Damaging winds, but also the potential for isolated tornadoes. And again, this is just for today. This is likely going to push off to the north and into other states as we go into the coming days, and it becomes a bigger threat for places like Georgia, Alabama, as well as South Carolina.
Allison, I'm really struck by the slowness of the storm. Just looking at your timeline there, you know, Naples seeing hurricane force winds in the morning, hurricane force winds not in Tampa, which is a couple of hours away drive. It's about a 2-hour away drive from Fort Myers to Tampa, but they're not seeing hurricane force winds until about 8 o'clock Sunday. Not in Tampa, which is a couple of hours away drive. It's about a 2-hour away drive from Fort Myers to Tampa, but they're not seeing hurricane force winds until about 8 o'clock Sunday night. I mean, this thing is moving up the West Coast all day tomorrow.
Yeah, so you just talked about, you said about a 2-hour drive, but you have to keep in mind you're driving a car 60, 70 miles per hour. This thing's moving only 9 miles per hour. So that's why there's such a huge difference there. It's not very fast. So it takes a long time to get from Naples up towards Tampa, and that's why there's such a big difference there, Anderson.
Yeah, Allison Chinchar, again, we'll continue checking with you. Kyung La is in Miami Beach for us. Kyung, obviously now the storm seems to be on the same track getting a sense of when it may make that turn. But again, for people in Miami Beach, it's really all about storm surge.
It is about the surge, and they are expecting the worst of it this evening. That's why the Miami Beach Police Department has put in a curfew starting at 8 p.m., sending out a message to anyone who didn't follow and adhere to the mandatory evacuation that's in place here, to make sure that they know that if they are out on the streets, whether in their cars or they're walking around, that they are subject to arrest from between the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. And this is happening just as we're starting to see some more sustained winds, some heavier winds and rain. And I want you to take a look at what the ocean is looking at right now. You can see the palm trees. They're really dancing here, but out there you can see that the ocean, there are a lot of waves, and that's really what has the fire department and the police department and this city very concerned. It is the storm surge. They still anticipate, even though the eye coming across here will not happen, they are very concerned about the storm surge, because this is a place that can flood even on a sunny day. So when you have these types of conditions, the wind and the rain, there are areas where the fire department has already been out trying to cut through some of the branches that have fallen. They're still trying to help people out who have stayed